chosen. Before any other word, I need to tell you this, because it is the only truth that matters in this exact minute. You did not fall upon this video by chance. Nobody scrolls their finger on the screen through 3, 4, 5 videos and stops precisely at this one, at the exact sentence where I say what you most needed to hear by coincidence. That doesn't exist. What exists is direction. What exists is a call that was waiting for the right moment to reach you, and that moment is now. Notice the number of coincidences that needed to align for you to be exactly here, listening to exactly this, on the exact day you needed it most. The algorithm, the time, the emotional state that made you look for something like this today and not last week. Call it coincidence if you wish. I prefer to call it a summons. I will show you, in the next few minutes, why everything you have lived until today, every closed door, every silence after a prayer, every night you felt forgotten was not a waste, it was preparation. It was, and I will also show you why this specific phase of your life has a name. It is the turning point. Stay with me until the end, because what I will reveal about the next chapter of your story completely changes how you will see every difficulty you are still facing. Think with me about a seed beneath the earth. It doesn't know it will become a tree. All it feels is weight, darkness, pressure from all sides, cold water soaking what is still fragile. If the seed had consciousness, it would swear that was its end. But it is not the end. It is the only possible path to become roots, trunk, canopy, shade for those who come after. The earth that presses is not a punishment. It is a womb. And what you're living now, even if it seems like only weight and silence, is exactly this kind of pressure. The pressure that precedes breaking out of the earth. You're not being crushed. You're being pushed upward. I know this is easy to say and hard to feel when the bills don't add up, when the answer doesn't come, when it seems like everyone around you is moving forward and you are stuck in a kind of spiritual waiting room. But pay attention to something almost no one has taught you about destiny. Destiny is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You go through the same type of pain several times, but at different levels, because each turn of the spiral is preparing you to sustain a greater weight of blessing than the previous version of you could hold. If victory arrived now, the way you were 2 years ago, it would destroy you. People who receive too quickly, without having gone through internal strengthening, usually lose quickly too. The delay you complained so much about to God was often the mechanism that guaranteed that when victory arrived, it would be to stay. There is an ancient story that summarizes this in a way that still sends shivers down the spine of anyone who understands its weight. A young man named Joseph had dreams, big dreams, dreams that said one day his own brothers would bow down before him. And what did he get in return for dreaming big? Envy. His brothers threw him into an empty cistern. Then they sold him as a slave. He ended up in Egypt, far from home, with no status, no support system, starting from scratch in a foreign land. As if that weren't enough, he was unjustly accused and spent years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. Years. It wasn't a weekend stumble. It was a trajectory of humiliation that dragged on for practically an entire decade. And if you had asked Joseph of the cistern or Joseph of the prison, does this make sense? He probably would have said no, because in the middle of the process, no one sees the complete picture. We only see the thread being pulled, not the entire embroidery. But time revealed what suffering had hidden. That same Joseph, who was rejected by his own family, became the second most powerful man in Egypt, responsible for managing abundance during a time of extreme famine. And it was precisely before him that the brothers who sold him had to bow, exactly as the dream had foretold years earlier. The cistern was not the end of Joseph's story. It was the first chapter of it. And this is what I need you to understand about your own timeline of pain. Every rejection you've experienced, every hurtful no, every relationship that taught you the bitter taste of betrayal was not a detour from your purpose. It was resistance training for the weight that is coming. No one climbs a high mountain carrying little weight on their legs. Those who climb big mountains trained on small mountains first. You are trained. Perhaps you haven't realized it yet, but you are trained. And it is precisely because this kind of internal training is so intense and so easy to misinterpret as failure, that I decided to create something to help you navigate this phase with more clarity than I had when I lived through mine. That is why I prepared the Star Mission for you, a 21-day practical challenge specifically designed for people who feel they carry a purpose greater than the routine they are stuck in, but who have not yet managed to translate that calling into clear direction. During these 21 days, you will receive daily reflections, simple practices, and self-knowledge exercises that transform that restlessness, that "I feel I was meant for more," into concrete steps. It is not distant theory. It is a map for you to stop interpreting your period of waiting as a mistake and start interpreting it as what it truly is: preparation. If you felt this text resonate with something you were already experiencing internally without knowing how to name it, leave the word "present" below in the first pinned comment. It is your way of saying today that you are ready to stop surviving the process and start understanding it. Now pay attention to an important distinction, because many people confuse victory with money in the bank and stop there. The promise being prepared for you is broader than that. It includes financial prosperity, yes, but it is not limited to that. It includes restored health, where chronic fatigue exists today. It includes mental peace, where constant anxiety exists today. It includes healed relationships, where distance or accumulated hurt exists today. It includes genuine joy, the kind that doesn't depend on external circumstances to exist. Think of a house built in a hurry, with only the rooms that could be shown to visitors. A beautiful living room, an impeccable facade, but a cracked foundation, a burst pipe, exposed wiring. Such a house collapses in the first storm. The restoration coming to you is not a facade renovation. It is foundation reconstruction. It is meticulous, it is slow in some parts, but it is complete. There is another ancient story of a woman named Esther, which illustrates this kind of positioning well. She was an ordinary young girl, an orphan, raised by a relative, with no title, no army, no political power at the time the story begins. And yet, she was positioned, through a sequence of events that no one consciously planned, to become queen in an empire at the exact moment her people needed someone in a position of influence to avert a collective tragedy. No one looking at Esther when she was just another young woman without resources would have bet that she would be the key piece in a historic turning point. But the text that records her story carries a phrase that echoes to this day. Who knows if you did not arrive at the royal position precisely for a moment like this? This is not luck. This is positioning. And the same principle that moved the pieces on the board to place an ordinary young woman in a decisive position of influence is, at this very moment, moving the pieces on your board as well. You may not see the movement now. Esther didn't see it either, while she lived the uncertain backstage events that preceded the throne. The great turning point, then, is never just external. It begins within in a reconfiguration of identity that most people never get to experience because they give up too soon. Think of a cocoon. From the outside, it seems still, almost dead, with no movement at all. But inside, the caterpillar is undergoing a process called histolysis. Its body literally dissolves into a kind of cellular soup before reorganizing into something completely new. If you were to open the cocoon in the middle of the process, thinking you would find a caterpillar or a butterfly, you would find a liquid mess that looks like nothing but chaos. But this chaos has a function. It is the raw material of transformation. And this is precisely how the internal reconstruction that precedes every great life turn works. From the outside, it looks like stagnation. From the inside, the necessary dissolution of the old version of you is happening, so that the new identity has space to form. This new identity is not about you becoming another person. It is about you ceasing to live hidden behind the fear and insecurity that have been taught to you, and finally occupying the space that has always been yours by right. Notice the difference between a person who constantly apologizes for existing and a person who walks with the calm conviction of someone who knows where they are going. The latter is not arrogant. They are aligned. They know their own worth without needing to prove it to anyone. And this is the most profound change that is being worked on in you now, the renewal of the mind, the exchange of an internal narrative of scarcity for a narrative of purpose. When this renewal truly happens, the dormant gifts, those abilities and sensitivities you've always had but never knew exactly where to fit, begin to awaken with clarity. You begin to understand what that which has always made you different is for. I have seen up close how confusing this internal transition phase can be when a person is alone in it, without any kind of structure to organize what they are feeling. And it was precisely with this in mind that the STAR mission was designed with an entire block dedicated to this identity awakening. Exercises that help you recognize your own signs, silence the external noise that distances you from who you really are, and precisely name your purpose instead of just having that vague feeling of, I feel I came for something bigger. If you have reached this point and felt that this description exactly matches what you are experiencing, comment purpose in the first pinned comment now. Don't leave it for later. The decision to name what you feel is the first step to stop surviving this phase and start moving through it with direction. This entire inner transformation, however, does not sustain itself. It requires a link that connects today's situation to the future that has not yet manifested, and this link has a name. Faith in motion, not stagnant faith. There is a vast difference between believing and acting from that belief. Think of an athlete who trains every day for a competition that has not yet occurred. He does not see the medal, does not feel its weight around his neck, does not hear the anthem playing, but he trains as if victory were already assured, because he understands that today's training is what builds the capacity to win tomorrow. Faith works like this. It is not passivity waiting for a miracle to fall from the sky. It is disciplined action driven by the certainty that there is a result that is not yet visible, but that is being built. David was just a shepherd boy when he faced a giant that the entire army of his people feared. He had no armor that fit, no formal military training. He wasn't even old enough to be a soldier yet. What he had was the memory of having faced a lion and a bear alone in the field, protecting the flock, and the conviction that the same strength that sustained him in those unseen battles would sustain him in that visible battle. Moses, decades before becoming the liberator of an entire people, stammered, doubted his own ability to speak in public, and yet he was summoned precisely to lead one of the greatest liberations ever recorded. Abraham left everything he knew, his land, his family, his security, heading for a place he didn't even know exactly where it was, simply because he trusted a promise that at the time had no concrete evidence of being fulfilled. None of these three waited to feel courageous to act. They acted, and courage grew in the process, like a muscle that only strengthens when it is challenged. Notice something important in these three stories. In none of them did courage appear before action. The order we usually imagine, first I feel courageous, then I act, is almost never the real order. In practice, it's the opposite. You take the first trembling step, with your voice failing, with the certainty that you will fail, and it is only in the midst of the movement that courage begins to form, as if it needed the friction of action to be born. This explains why so many people spend years waiting to feel ready to change their lives, to end a cycle, to take the first step towards their purpose, and never truly feel it. Readiness is not a feeling that precedes movement. It is a result of it. And it is precisely at this point in the journey, between faith and its visible manifestation, that most people give up. Because generally, shortly before the turning point truly happens, life tests whether you have truly absorbed all that you learned in the preparation process. It is not uncommon that, right at this point, someone from your past appears, or a situation very similar to one you swore never to repeat again, just to see if you will respond in the old way or the new way. It is not punishment, it is a calibration check. The question was never, will God bless you? The question has always been, have you become the person who knows how to manage the blessing without reverting to the old pattern? And the answer to this question, I promise I will give you before the end of this video. But first we need to talk about the real magnitude of this shift, because it was never just about you. Every genuine transformation, when truly sustained, overflows. It does not remain confined within a single person. Think of a dam. When the water level surpasses a certain point, it begins to spill, feeding the river below, the crops, the the entire city that depends on that watercourse. Your turning point is the same. It is not just about you achieving what you have always desired. It is about you becoming, for those around you, living proof that it is possible to overcome what seemed insurmountable. Your child, your younger sibling, that friend who is also in a phase of doubt, will look at your story and find the courage to continue their own journey, simply by seeing that you did not give up in the middle of the process. This is legacy. It is not about leaving money for someone after you die. It is about leaving living proof while you are still here that the process is worthwhile. Consider how many people throughout their lives have abandoned a dream because they knew no one who had gone through something similar and emerged whole on the other side. The absence of a reference point kills more dreams than the lack of capacity. And it is precisely this gap that your story, when told with honesty, comes to fill for someone you may not even know yet. You do not need a stage, a microphone, or thousands of followers to leave this kind of mark. Sometimes the entire legacy is summarized in a kitchen conversation years later, where a family member looks back and understands that the difficult period you went through was what paved the way for everything that came after. Legacy is not measured by reach. It is measured by depth. And it is precisely at this point in the journey, between the preparation that has already been done and the legacy that is being built, that most people most need structure to avoid retreating at the final step. That is why I have prepared the Star Mission for you. In addition to self-knowledge exercises and daily reconnection practices with purpose, the challenge includes specific affirmations to strengthen precisely this phase of sustenance, where the temptation to return to the old pattern is often strongest. It is the difference between a victory that lasts a season and a victory that becomes the new normal of your life. If you want to cross this point with structure, instead of crossing it alone as most do, comment legacy in the first pinned comment right now before continuing to watch. This is your confirmation that you are ready to transform preparation into lasting construction. Now come back with me to that test I promised to explain. The most delicate moment of any turning point process is not the beginning, when everything is still dark and hope is the only fuel available. The most delicate moment is just before the light truly appears, because that is where accumulated fatigue tries to convince you to give up steps away from the finish line, or where an old situation, a person, a pattern you swore to have overcome, reappears in a different guise, testing whether the change you experienced was superficial or deep-rooted. The answer to this test is not to run from it, nor to pretend it does not exist. The answer is to recognize the pattern, to be grateful for what it taught you in the past, and to consciously choose not to repeat the cycle, even if its new version seems more seductive, more convincing, more this time it's different than the previous one. Those who understand this are not caught by surprise. Those who understand this cross the test with the calm of someone who already knows the outcome of the exam before even taking it. And when this test is navigated with discernment, what comes next is no longer a distant promise. It is acceleration. There is a vast difference between the waiting phase and the acceleration phase. In waiting, each day feels like weeks, and progress, when it exists, is almost imperceptible. In acceleration, things move at a speed that seems disproportionate to the effort invested, because everything that has been worked on behind the scenes during years of silence begins to manifest in a concentrated way. It is like damming water for a long time and then opening all the floodgates at once. The volume that took years to accumulate drains away in a fraction of the time. If you have felt in recent weeks a different restlessness, an internal urgency that was not there before, a discomfort with stagnation that you previously tolerated, pay attention to this. It is not anxiety without reason. It is a sign that the season is changing, and your spirit has already perceived it before your rational mind can confirm it. End this period of waiting with gratitude, not because everything you experienced was easy, but because each stage of it, the well, the metaphorical prison, the silence, the waiting, served a specific function in building who you needed to be to sustain what is coming. Surrender what is still outside your control, because insisting on controlling every detail of the process only delays its manifestation. And walk with the quiet confidence of one who understands that they are no longer in the waiting phase, You are now entering the season of harvest. If this text found you at the exact moment you most needed to hear this, know this. You are not late. You are precisely on time to cross the portal that is opening before you.